Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to Before I Do, the show that shares with you everything that should be done before saying I do. Whether you are single, dating, engaged, don't know if you want to be married, you are tuned into the show that helps you to facilitate courageous conversations on dating and relationships.
That's right. And this show is meant to be interactive. And so we want to hear from you. We want you to post your comments, your ideas, your opinions, your experiences, or even the experiences of your quote unquote friends. It's really you, but you're posing it as your friends. We welcome that as well. You threw me off when you said greetings and salutations.
I saw you do the air quote thing too. That's what you do to make sure you sound deep. Everyone, today is February the 15th. So that means we are at the day after Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And so our theme for tonight is love hangover, pleasure or pain. So we know that many of you went all out for Valentine's Day, went over and above and tried to meet and exceed expectations. So we wanted to have a candid conversation in regards to what the hangover looks like, not just for Valentine's Day, but even in the form of relationships. We know that Valentine's Day can be a holiday that can be triggering for individuals when it comes to love and relationships, love that has been lost, relationships that have been moved on from. And so I want to share a little bit in regards to how to navigate that situation. So tonight, when we think about a hangover, and I will admit, I'm going to be putting my business out there a lot tonight, just so you all know. So I am a former drunk. I'm a former alcoholic myself. I
Sounds more clinical.
Can I let me say? Yes, it's my process. So I'm a former drunk / alcoholic. And so I have had many days, many nights where I had to deal with go. And so a hangover indulgence, when it talk about hangovers are unpleasant consequences of having too many drinks. And so it is the symptoms usually several hours after you stop drinking, when you're associated with dehydration. And so there are other physical components that go into that, but it is an absolutely horrible feeling. You have headaches, your stomach hurts, you're disoriented, you're dizzy. You don't want to do, the thing is, you want to do everything and nothing. So you want to stay there, but if you lay down, the room is spinning, your head is throbbing, but you really want to get up and move around. So it is an absolutely horrible feeling.
And so then so he just explained what a hangover is. And so now I want to explain what a love hangover is. And a love hangover, that's when it's referencing the sadness or a loss, a grievance, perhaps after a breakup, a divorce. And it may be referred to as a broken heart, right? Based on that grief, obviously, usually at the end of a relationship or a relationship that is resolved, sometimes you can experience grief. Any kind of loss could be considered a love hangover. People experience love hangover. Holidays or events like Valentine's Day definitely can trigger a love hangover and revive memories that may lead to unhealthy thoughts and unhealthy behaviors.
Absolutely. So when we talk about love hangovers, there are symptoms that can identify if you are in the midst of a love hangover. So one of them is disbelief. So when a relationship ends, you may feel like you're in denial for some time, not really ready to accept that it's over, and you might continue to think or behave as if the breakup is temporary, even if there's no evidence that it's anything but final. So you may try to avoid the inevitable or continue to act as if you are in a relationship with the person. So this is when we see people get into very unhealthy behaviors, stalking, and things of that nature. And that is because they are in a state of disbelief.
Right. And now, let's be honest, stalking doesn't have to mean that you're like waiting outside of their apartment or their house or whatever, or, you happen to show up at the restaurant or the mall or the event that they're at. Stalking can definitely be they don't even have to know it, right? This could be you, trolling their social media and not necessarily even saying anything or responding, but you can't go a day without looking at their social media. Another symptom of a love hangover is preoccupation. Preoccupation with that occupied with that relationship, and it can affect many aspects of your life, such as your former love. You may constantly be on your mind. You may it may ruminate the relationship, or pretty much you may not be able to concentrate on anything else because you're super focused on the relationship. Everything that you see in here reminds you of that person. It could be people that don't even look like this individual, but somehow it just triggers that memory. And, it goes back to the loss, it goes back to the grieving process, it goes back to really just the constant reminders and memories of this individual.
Absolutely. And so the next symptom of a love hanger is the inability to go. When you have love hangover, you may have difficulty letting go of the relationship. You could struggle to accept that it's over, and you might misinterpret their behavior as encouraging you to hold on to the hope of getting back together. You may continue to make plans for the two of you. So now you're essentially going into a place of being delusional. So you, even after your ex may have stated that they aren't coming back, and instead of returning their belongings, you may try to keep them and put them where they could see them on a daily basis. You're hoarding the things that they have. You're making it hard for them to actually gather their belongings. And so there's this adamant need to hold on to any and everything that is connected to them. And that is a sign of an inability to let go.
And then the next sign of a love hangover is feeling stuck. Right? You're experiencing this love hangover. When you just feel stuck, you're not moving forward, you're not moving backwards. You're just kind of standing still, almost paralyzed. And so this is where you're really just stuck on the past relationship, things that happened in the past. You may keep doing things that you did when you were actually a couple, maybe driving past a restaurant that you guys used to constantly go to during the time that you were dating. So even if it's, even if a new love arises, you could be in a new relationship, but still find yourself being stuck. And so it's really important that, when you recognize that you are stuck, to do something about it. But a lot of times people may not even recognize that they're stuck. And even if you do, you may not choose to move forward. And so that's a really big deal.
Absolutely. And the last one is you may find yourself missing your former significant other. A love hangover can come with intense feelings of loss, which can cause you to experience the stages of grief, which, as we explained on this show before, are disbelief, anger, negotiation, depression, and then moving on into acceptance. But again, being stuck in that cycle of the first four when it comes to the grief cycle. And so while you may miss your significant other or feel sad and incomplete without them, it is important to recognize that these symptoms are actually a sign that there's work for you to do in order to be able to move on. And while it may be hard for you to think of a future without that person by your side, you must be able to work through that cycle and come to a state of acceptance to cope with and to overcome the loss of the relationship. So tonight we're talking about love hangover. We're talking about trying to get past those relationships and those individuals. And so we want to go into our question of the night, our speak now question of the night. Charmaine, you share that with us, please?
All right. So when was your last love hangover? How did it impact you? And then what steps did you use to overcome it? So we're saying when, because if you've been at least even in one relationship, you could have experienced a love hangover moment, right? But so we want to know, when was your last love hangover? How did it impact you? And then what steps did you use to overcome it?
All right. So what we're going to do is going to ask you to put your comments, put your answer to that question in the chat. We are going to take a brief commercial break, and we will be right back with tonight's show. Again, more of Love Hangover right here on Before I Do. All right, everyone, welcome back to Before I Do. Tonight's topic is love hangover, and we just went over the symptoms of being involved or dealing with a love hangover. And our speak now, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Our speak now question was, when was the last time that you had a love hangover? How did it impact you? And what steps did you use to overcome it?
So I actually, like I told you, I'm going to be putting my business out in the street a lot tonight. So my actual last love hangover was you. Yes,
How is that possible? Because we're still together. That's what most
exactly.
people are thinking.
So here's the thing, right? Because a love hangover does not necessarily always lead to a breakup.
Okay.
Sometimes a love hangover can come from the expectations that you have for the person or the relationship, and reconciling and coming to the conclusion that you're going to need to change your perspective and your attitude about the relationship in order for it to survive. And so the last time that I actually dealt with a love hangover was when we first got married. This was in the early newlywed stages of our relationship, and so we had gotten this nice townhouse. You were working and you were busy focusing on your job, and got involved in some extracurricular activities when it came to your job. And I would find myself rushing home from work in order to spend time with you, and you weren't there. Aww. And I found myself sitting there waiting for you. And so I began to be upset because it didn't seem like you were as excited about coming home to spend time with me as I was about you. And so when we began to have a conversation, I realized that in a lot of ways, I was beginning to move into codependence because of my preconceived notions about what it meant to be married. And so just like you were busy making sure that you were fulfilling your individual goals, which is something that we absolutely counsel and talk with couples about, is not losing yourself in your marriage, but making sure that you're moving forward in the things that you've been put here to accomplish. I needed to be about the business of making sure that I was focused on my individual goals as well and my purpose. So a lot of the artistic pursuits and things that I got into were actually I was forced to come face to face with them because of some of the things that we were dealing with in our marriage, as far as with us pursuing our goals. And I want to be clear, this is not a diss to you at all, but again, it was a moment of reckoning for me in recognizing that I needed to focus on my individual goals.
I still picture you rushing home to see me, and I wasn't there. Oh my gosh, that's like, a music video scene. But to be honest, I was a new educator and I was struggling, y'all. So it took me forever to know how to write a lesson plan, and I was struggling. But so it did take me hours and hours to like get my grip on being a new teacher. And so that kind of inundated me. But that is a good example of how you can be in a relationship and experience a love hangover, experience a loss or grief. And so, okay, Lindsay, thank you for tuning in tonight. And we have definitely a comment about that. And all right. We're not sending on that. There we go.
All right. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So Lindsay, you say currently entering a divorce process that I didn't want. Okay. Working on setting boundaries for myself. Oh, that's beautiful. Also doing things that make me happy. Absolutely. And investing more in my friendships.
Lindsay is already digging into the tips on how to handle love hangovers as we get ready to get into that right now.
Yes, Lindsay, I'm just going to tell you, you are in a relationship with yourself for the rest of your life. So I love what you're doing. You're really going through the right process of loving on yourself, surrounding yourself with friends who can love on you during the season, friends who will be patient and understanding. That is important to definitely make sure you have a strong sister circle of friends, because a divorce can take you through, again, a lot of, emotional experiences. And so you definitely need a support system. So absolutely, they're doing the right thing and, preparing for that, but also building yourself up and investing in yourself. All right. So we're going to go into our first tip for recovering from a love hangover. All right. And the first one is awareness, right? And so awareness, and what that means is to acknowledge the role that the relationship or those expectations played in your life. Okay. So the first step is to change anything, to pretty much just change anything that really would prevent you from being more aware of where you are. So without that honesty, transparency, full awareness as to where you are post the relationship, you want to make sure that you're not in denial. You want to acknowledge it, recognize it, and own it, take ownership of it. And so it may be helpful to answer the following questions. For example, you might say, what do I get from this relationship, right? Or what did I get from this relationship? Perhaps you gain those feelings of security, a sense of belonging, comfort, and meaning in your life. And so, just like Lindsay mentioned, you have to take that back. Make sure that if, for example, where she is, she's taking back that sense of security, belonging, comfort, and meaning, and surrounding herself with beautiful people that can affirm those things. The next question is to write down your, if there's anything in that relationship that hurt you, compare those pros and those cons, right? And are the benefits worth it? And so you want to be honest with your answers.
Absolutely. Awareness is always the first step in any situation that you find yourself in, and making sure that you take proper inventory of the benefits and the challenges. So before you decide to walk away or stay, either way, you want to make sure that you sit down and take proper inventory so you know exactly what it is that you're up against. All right. So tip number 2, you want to make the decision how you want to move forward with or without the individual. So once you're able to identify the behaviors, the pros and the cons, and how they impact you and your relationship, you want to decide whether you want to continue on or work towards change. Now, that change can be either within your relationship, or that change could be away from and moving out of the relationship. Now, here are some signs that you may need to let go of the relationship. Number 1, once the excitement wears off, you can see that the two of you are not compatible. Charmaine and I have talked before about the various seasons within a relationship. It's easy when you're in the spring and the summer portion, which is that beginning of a relationship where the person has not necessarily shown their true selves, but as Charmaine likes to say, you are seeing their representative. For you to really gravitate towards them, but as you move and those you said, and you start to see who you're put to your relationship. Now, this is not about tip for you. Why didn't you do this? Is about making sure that you're monitoring what it is that you're actually getting from your mate and what your mate is getting free. So they're starting not to put in as much work into the relationship. The old people like to say the same thing that you did to get your baby hooked is the same thing you got to do to keep them. Ring the bell for that, please. So we want to be careful of that. So you also don't feel safe around that person anymore in the relationship. That could be a telltale sign that you may need to make a decision in regards to it. Also, you're being blamed for the problems in the relationship. You all are getting into finger pointing. And then lastly, your intuition is telling you that it is time to move on. So if you find yourself in this place, it's important to make sure that your decision that is definitive, and that you want to remind yourself of why you need to make that change.
All right. And the third tip that we want you guys to consider is to resign to let go of the relationship. And so, whoa, this is a big one, right? There's always that one person in the group that says, oh man, you need to let her go, cut her loose. Or there's always that female friend that might say, oh no, you need to drop him, you need to let him go, right? But this is something that's really, you have to make that decision for yourself. So letting go can be the most difficult thing that you can do in your healing journey, is letting go. Man, right? It's a process, because, some people say the longer that, really researchers show that the longer that you've been in a relationship, it takes half that time to get over the person.
Wow.
So if you've been in a relationship with someone for 14 years, man, what's really research shows is it's going to take you 7 years to get over that person. Well, I mean, while that's not always the case, it definitely depends on how strong and how much access that person had in your life.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a quick point there too. There's a difference between getting over and moving on.
There it is.
Just because you have not gotten over the person is not a license for you not to move on. So even again, that within that seven year years, you may even become involved with someone else. And it's important that if you do, that you're honest about, hey, I was involved in a relationship for 14 years. I'm still getting over my ex, to make sure that you're transparent and honest, so that person can make an informed decision about how they are going to interact with you while you go through that.
That's right. And so definitely the first to break that down is you want to make sure you're reaching out to safe people. These are people who not are yes people, not people that are just going to, tell you what you want, but safe people who will be your accountability partners and make sure that, you are holding yourself to the expectations that you say you want.
Yeah. Also, too, you want to live one day at a time. Focus on taking it one day at a time. And this is especially if you're experiencing withdrawal symptoms. Remind yourself that it oftentimes is going to get worse before it gets better. However, that is a sign that you're moving out of addiction to the relationship and further towards your healing.
Yeah. And that's a really big one, because sometimes are we actually addicted to the person, or are we addicted to some of the elements of the relationship? So be careful not to confuse that. Letter C, it says, beware of the need for closure. That's a big word. We love to say, oh, I need closure. Well, when we say a person has a need for closure, we're really saying that they're seeking the answers and resolutions that they need to move on. But unfortunately, this is not always feasible or prudent. In fact, it can aid in unhealthy pursuits and a heightened codependency. And it's important that individuals remain consistent in leading their healing process. Do not allow closure to get you sucked back in to the relationship.
All right. Now, another one is you want to make sure that you challenge your negative beliefs. Start talking to yourself and questioning your automatic negative beliefs. And a good way to do that is by asking and answering the following questions. Number one, do I have experiences that would contradict my beliefs in any way? Number two, what evidence do I have that what I believe is actually true? Number three, am I falling into the thinking trap? In other words, am I falling into the place of imagining the worst case scenario? Number four, what would I tell a friend if he or she had the same thought? In other words, how would I advise someone else that was in my same shoes? What would I tell them? Am I confusing a belief with a fact? And we just talked about this. When it comes to belief is what we define as our core value and truth. A fact is something that may be something that is true within the moment or within that circumstance or that situation. But when we begin to adopt facts as truth, for example, if you're sick, the fact is that you're sick. But are you going to be sick? Are you planning to be sick your whole life? No. So we have to be able to adopt to the belief that I may be sick now, but I am going to get well, and I'm going to do things that are going to align with that belief. And lastly, am I basing my conclusion mostly on my feelings or on genuine, true evidence?
All right, let's go to letter E, which says soothe yourself using techniques such as deep breathing. We are big on deep breathing and helping couples to do that, and especially individuals as well. Mindfulness and meditation, such a powerful thing. A lot of times the battlefield is in the mind. Joyce Myers mentions that a lot. So, if you can gain control of your mind, then definitely you can that can soothe you throughout this love hangover process.
Absolutely.
As well as grounding exercises and positive affirmations. You have to speak those words and get your physical wellness as well through exercise.
Charmaine and I do one-on-one men's and women's coaching. And so Charmaine is a big proponent when it comes to these techniques for the women that she works with. And it absolutely is effective. The next one is, and Lindsay actually just mentioned this.
Yes.
You want to invest more energy in taking care of yourself and pursuing your own interests. Often in relationships, we lose ourselves in our mates. And as I mentioned in my scenario, I had to stop myself from allowing myself to become codependent and losing myself in my wife and in my marriage and depending on her for my happiness. My happiness is not my wife's responsibility. I am the one that is leading the charge for my happiness and my fulfillment. And so you want to make sure that you're investing energy in taking care of yourself and exploring new interests.
You better say that again. All right, because that's a big one. That is a big one. All right. And then are we on G?
Yes.
G. Find ways to give and help others. Oh my gosh. It is no other way to definitely heal, go through the healing process, is finding ways to help others. That can lift your mood. There are physical and chemical reactions in your body when you pour into other people and you're able to support them. That will lift your mood. It will increase your sense of purpose.
Absolutely. So many of the steps that you all are hearing, right? You will hear these. And as I mentioned, I told y'all about my drinking problem. Y'all just hearing about all my business tonight. So the last step in Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12th step, is exactly this one, is to find a way to help someone else. And part of the reason why that is because if you do not find a way to pour into someone else from your pain, from your situation, then most likely you are going to relapse and you are going to drink again. And it's the same thing when it comes to your relationship. If you do not find a way to support other people in being in healthy relationships and making good decisions, most of the time you're going to find yourself back in an unhealthy relationship yourself.
Now, again, because that's something that we definitely have recovered from. Addiction comes on my side of the family as well as his side of the family. And both of us have definitely worked through addictions. And I'm going to tell you, it's very easy to really overcome one addiction, but then jump to another.
Yep,
and so you have to be careful. Even helping other people can be an addiction.
Yes.
So make sure it's genuine. Make sure you pace yourself and you take your time and you have not just swapped one addiction for the other.
And as you mentioned, that you're doing it for the right reason.
It is.
You are not doing it to feed your own ego. You're not doing it again to become codependent and tie yourself to someone else's well-being. You're doing it as a way to support that individual, but also to support your healing process as well. All right. So again, we're talking about the 5 tips on how to recover from a love hangover. Tip number 4, you want to confront your fears. We talked about this a little bit. So here's the challenge when it comes to change. People always talk about change. People talk about growth. Well, change can be hard because we get used to habits. We get comfortable with the things that are familiar to us. And so while we may have a strong urge to grow, we also fear and resist change. And this fear can create a mental block in us internally that makes it impossible for us to change. So we have to take certain steps in order to face our fears. That may be writing a letter about exactly what your fears are and confronting those fears. It may be stating the reasons why changing is in your best interest. What are the things that you're hoping to get from that change? And you want to assure yourself that you are old enough now to take care of yourself and be your own friend and your own protector.
And I love that one because, again, fear, we hear this acronym all the time, is false evidence that's appearing real. But fear, we want you to think about it. There's false emotions appearing real and false environments appearing real. So that emotions, right, evidence and environments, that all of those things can sometimes you can have in your mind that this is what's happening. And again, it can be a false sense of environment, emotions, and evidence.
Absolutely.
All right. And then we have number 5, which is practice forgiveness. My favorite. Practice forgiveness. Forgiveness is an important step in letting go of the past and operating with peace and reassurance. Forgiveness is not about the other person. We hear that a lot of times. It's not about the other person. So then the question becomes does it have to involve the other person? And absolutely not. Your forgiveness does not even have to involve the other person. All right. It has nothing to do with whether or not they deserve it or whether they sought it out. They don't have to chase you down, right? You can forgive someone without their permission, without their participation. And that's a powerful thing for you to know. This is an individual decision and is pertinent to your healing process and growth. So we definitely encourage couples to itemize what are those things? What are the offenses that have occurred? Because you want to itemize those things and definitely deal with those things. Put a voice to them, put a sound, put them in your journal, and then absolutely go through your forgiveness journey, which is very unique to each individual, largely tied to your culture and how you saw forgiveness playing out in childhood.
And notice how formal these things are. When we talk a lot about writing and Lindsay talked about journaling, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a very important part of this process. This is not just going through it in your head, but it's actually being able to make them tangible and putting it down on paper. So a couple of steps that you want to take in regards to your forgiveness plan. And you all will notice that there are two different sides of forgiveness. When we talk about the plan to forgive others, the first thing that you want to do is make a list of the people that you need to forgive.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about your relationship, there may have been some other individuals within that relationship that you need to forgive as well, that you're harboring different things for. Maybe your significant other had a friend who enabled him and didn't necessarily speak and was a supporter of your relationship. Maybe it was a mother or whomever, but you want to make a definitive list of the individuals that you want to forgive.
And then the second thing we would like you to do is to create a charity chart. And in that, we want you to draw on a piece of paper 3 columns. And the top of those columns, we want it to say regrets, resentments, and appreciation. So we want you to write down each column every regret that you think that you can think of that's related to that person. Every resentment, things you resent the person for, those feelings that you have toward them of resentment, and everything that you actually appreciate. They were a teacher for you.
Mm-hmm.
You learned some good things, but you also might have learned some bad things. But either way, you have to acknowledge they were a teacher for you. So in that, you can at least appreciate what you walk away from and the wisdom that you get.
Absolutely. And when we talk about the forgiveness of others, the third thing that you want to do is you want to write a letter to each person on your list. Now, calm down, pump the brakes, because this letter does not necessarily have to be sent to them. You may decide to send it to them. You want to make sure that you use wisdom and prudence, but you want to pour everything that you want to say into that letter, because again, this is not necessarily for them. This is to help you to organize and reconcile your feelings and experiences with that person in a therapeutic and cathartic way. So while you want to acknowledge that you cannot change what has happened in the past, but that holding on to some of the things that you're harboring for them is preventing you from being able to move forward.
All right, I'm going to repeat that disclaimer. We did not tell you to send a bunch of letters to people in your life. Again, that is use discernment, use wisdom, because those people you're not supposed to talk to no more. You don't want to stir up and talk them up by sending them this letter, right? And so if you have a sense of peace, again, this process is for you and about you. Now, the 2 forms you want to focus on that piece first, and guilt and action for moving forward. And then the last one is self-forgiveness. Takes the longest. This one is the more difficult one, especially if you the people who are forgiveness sometimes is a challenge. So you can only love others to the degree that we love ourselves. So the same could be said about forgiveness. We can only forgive others to the degree that we can forgive ourselves. If you cannot forgive yourself from some of your decisions, your regrets, and all of those things, and find appreciation in what you learned, your 18-year-old self, what your 18-year-old self taught you, what your 25-year-old self taught you, if you can't find appreciation in that, even in the mistakes and what you learned from them, it's going to definitely be hard to forgive others. So forgiving yourself can be painful, but it's absolutely necessary. You have to build that muscle in order to be able to have healthy relationships.
Absolutely. No, you all have a couple of questions here, some really good ones. Donna says, will this, absolutely. Donna says, will this be available for her to see at a live, will this be available at the library? I need to hear and meditate on this again. Absolutely. You can catch the replay of this. And also, just so you all know, we are going to document some of the questions that are in this chat, and we are going to cover them next week, because guess what next week is?
It's it's Q&A night.
It's Q&A night.
Our Speak Now Q&A night. Lord. So please tune back in next week, because you guys are giving us some great questions and we absolutely want to address them. And so, yeah, so I'm going to let you proctor the chat. We loving that you're talking to us. Shout out to Veronica. Shout out to Lindsay. All right, for loving on us tonight and sharing your wisdom and your experiences with us.
Yeah, Veronica says self-forgiveness is the hardest for me.
Is.
I honestly feel like I let my kids down by divorcing their dad, but it was toxic. So Veronica, just so you know, that is a natural part of the getting over the love hangover process, especially when you have children involved. When you make a decision that impacts them, it can be it's very easy to feel guilty, but it's important for you to know, look yourself in the mirror, and just like you said, know that I made this decision based on something that was not only good for me, but that is going to be good for my children. And rest assured and believe that they will be able to get old enough to make their own decision and understand the decision that you made.
Absolutely. And you ask yourself, in staying and leaving, you taught them something, you showed them something in leaving, but you know what? You would have showed them a lot in staying. You talk to anyone whose parents stayed together and it was toxic, and all the lessons that they learned and had in the front row seat, they had to witness the toxicity. And so in our world of counseling, we're here to let you know it is traumatic. It is much healthier for couples who really, if you are not doing the work towards healing and you're not doing that work, or one person is they have tapped out, it is more important to work on that healing apart because again, a person can't grow and change if they don't have a will. They don't have to have the skills, but they have to have a will.
Absolutely. Great show tonight. Again, our topic tonight was Love Hangover. Be sure to visit us at couplesacademy.org. Also, be sure to book Charmaine and I for a session.
Yes.
Again, we specialize in one-on-one individual men's and women's counseling and also couples counseling as well. Be sure to join us next week for our Before I Do Speak Now Q&A night. Again, if you did not get your question answered this evening, tune in next week and we'll be sure to answer it on our Q&A night. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to Before I Do. My name is Walter Jennings.
My name is Charmaine Jennings.
And we look forward to seeing you all next week. Good night, everybody.
Welcome to the Couples Academy app. The Couples Academy app is your go-to hub for how to do marriage right. Get started with our app today by perusing our amazing features that conveniently allow you to connect. This app is packed with powerful content and resources to help you grow and stay connected. With this app, you can watch our messages, find marriage resources, watch, listen, and read the real-life stories of restored couples, sign up for events, read articles and blog posts, stay up to date with push notifications, share your favorite messages via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email, and download messages for offline listening. For more information about the Couples Academy app, go to couplesacademy.org.